Hello, everybody, and before I get into today's episode, I want to thank you all so much. Episode 100 came out a couple weeks ago. I didn't do an episode last week, I just wasn't feeling it, and hopefully, I should be able to get this week's episode out to you guys. I am feeling a bit unwell this week, but I should hopefully be able to edit this in time and release it on the usual date. Yeah, I hope you all enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. And as per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this is episode 101. Last week, not last week, the week before actually, episode 100. I did take last week off because I just wasn't in the right place to do another episode, but that's fine because this week we're back on, and I'm joined by Harry Jobson again for a second episode.
I'm back.
And for this week, we're going to be covering, I believe, certainly one of your favorite films. Is that right?
It is my favorite
It
film.
is his. Okay.
Uh, favorite standalone film.
Yeah, not like so, not franchise. Like it's not franchise stuff. You're ruling
Oh
that out,
well,
or
I'm in love with like the first Back to the Future, but I mean,
hmm,
it falls into the trilogy for me. It's part of my like trilogy favorites. It's not really like my number one favorite.
yeah. The Truman Show is what we're talking about this week. Uh, so yeah, I rewatched it earlier today, in fact, I've seen this film once before. I remember when I did. I don't remember like the date exactly, but I remember sort of the year it happened. It was 2020. Um, and I would after and for that year after classes on my high school classes on Wednesday it would have been, I think, or was it Wednesday? I think Wednesdays, Thursdays, sometime during the week, I would go to a film course and do that for a couple hours. So I'd leave school early and I catch a train there, and it's a 50-minute train ride to get from like the train station to where I had to go. So during those treks, I would download in the morning before I went out to school episodes of TV or movies or whatever. So I watch a few watch various different things on my train rides, and The Truman Show was one of the films that I watched. And when I saw it, I thought it was great, but I hadn't seen it in a couple years until early today. So we will see if my opinion has changed on that front.
Mm.
Do you have a memory of when you first saw it?
When I first saw the Truman Show, I was a kid. I think I I would have been around like 6 or 7. It's a very terrifying thing to watch as a little kid
That is true.
because
The
you're just
entire
now
world
convinced that the
watching.
whole world is watching and they're all like
Mm.
automated.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah,
trying to create this scenario, and they're trying to
illusion, this fake
this illusion,
reality.
and you
But
can't really do anything either. You can't actually travel or do anything truly meaningful with yourself
that was the
either.
thing. Is like I'd never really traveled as a kid either. Like I'd go to like movie world and stuff, but I still haven't left Australia, so I'm still not convinced that it's not a lie.
I
Um,
have yeah.
the reason I watched it when I was so young, I grew up one of my favorite actor being Jim Carrey. As a kid, my
Everybody
favorite
loves Jim
movies.
Carrey though, I
Well,
think.
as a kid, my favorite movie, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. I had The Mask and Dumb and Dumber were like my three favorite movies
Yeah.
growing up.
Well,
Um,
that's classic 90s Jim Carrey comedy.
which The Mask also terrifying, but that's a whole different. But yeah, The Truman Show. I remember seeing it as a kid, and it sort of stuck with me. It was like the first movie I ever saw that had meaning. That wasn't that not that had meaning, but sort of that had meaning. It was the first
It's a
movie that
film
I
that
saw
you
that
can
wasn't a
take a look.
comedy. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey trying to outdumb each other. It
Yeah.
was it was something that was like it it had thought.
Yeah, it's a film that where you can because like those Jim Carrey comedies that you just mentioned, you can just sort of you take them at face value because there's not really that much to take from them. They're very much just sort of
You turn your brain off a little bit.
yeah, but yeah, the Truman Show is more of a it was more dramatic work for Jim Carrey. I think this is one of his sort of early dramatic roles because but he's so synonymous with comedy that you sort of or people you mention great Jim Carrey roles, and I mean this will probably be one of them, but I don't know if it will be the first one. I think people will go to if they to go for dramatic work, they'd probably go for like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is a film
Yeah,
that he also was had a lot of he got a lot of praise for.
yeah. I think this is the best thing he's done personally.
Mm.
But and we'll get into that in a minute. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I thought it was done. I think it was incredibly good. For me, it's a 10 out of 10. I don't think you can really fault it.
All right, so that's the rating
Um,
right off the bat. All right, I mean it's your favorite film. That's one of like I think that was pretty clear though. To be
yeah,
fair, if it's one
yeah.
of your
I have a bias. I have a bias. I think that the Oscars should just. I mean, it was probably one of the best picture years in a long time. But for LA Confidential to get or the Full Monty to get like a nomination over the Truman Show that year.
I think the Truman Show was the year after. I think it
It
was.
came out in '98, but even '99 is worse because '98 is a great year. It's got Titanic and Good Will Hunting, which Good Will Hunting is another one of my favorite films.
Let me just have a. I think you're. I think all those films came out in 1997, and Truman Show came out the year after
Yeah.
those ones. So I
Well,
think.
have you seen the '99 nominees? It's so much worse. It's the
Oh, it's
fact that none of
what
them.
Saving Private Ryan and.
Life is Beautiful, Thin Red Line, Shakespeare in Love, and Elizabeth.
Oh, Shakespeare in Love, I've heard is awful. People, it's terrible. It's a terrible film. But
Yeah, that got nominated
and I believe it
over.
won Best Picture as well.
How
oh,
did Saving Private Ryan not win?
well, from what I've gathered from people who are more familiar with it, is that Harvey Weinstein is a very, very well when he was, he would
Not a.
campaign. Yeah, when he was before he got all these things came out about him, he was a very vicious campaigner. He'd go around and make sure everybody who was like a voter he would make sure they would see the film and he would he would sort of throw out disparaging he'd say like Saving Private Ryan's only good for like the first 20 minutes or whatever, like the opening D-Day battle, and then the rest it's sort of
Yeah,
like not as good. um which and doing all these other underhanded not great things, and I think that's part of the reason why
yeah.
Shakespeare in Love won. I
I
think
mean,
otherwise I don't know if it would have. I think people would have respond if all this stuff hadn't been
yeah.
happening. I think people would have given it to
I
Saving
mean,
Private Ryan.
put some respect on Matt Damon's name. Back to back Best Picture nominees he's been in.
Hmm.
So like,
Yeah, that's
he was
true.
in Good
Yeah,
Will Hunting and
and
then Saving
Saving
Private
Private
Ryan.
Ryan.
Although
Yeah,
his role as Saving Private Ryan, but we digress.
yeah.
It's
Yeah. So the
yeah,
Truman Show was nominated at the Oscars that
yeah.
but not. Yeah, Jim Carrey was an egregious. I genuinely think he should have been nominated for Best Actor.
It
Like,
it was a snubbing of just disproportionate degree.
yeah,
It's similar to when Adam Sandler did Uncut Gems. They can't like look past that comedy actor and
yeah,
see that
exactly.
quality. It's Uncut Gems, like not even getting nominated. That's a snubbing. But
Yeah,
we watched it happen in 1999, and we're watching it happen in
yeah.
2019.
And I mean, it sort of happens every year. There's always like one person who like should be nominated because they are just so good, but like it doesn't happen because the Academy is dumb. And the weird thing is, about the Truman Show is that Jim Carrey was nominated and won the Golden Globe for the Truman Show,
Yeah.
and then he wasn't nominated for an Oscar. And I
Uh,
believe that's the only time that's ever happened where the
are the
Golden
Golden
Globe.
Globes more valid than the Oscars?
Well, no, I don't think they are. I'm not saying they're valid,
Now no, no. I
but
after hearing that, I might have to change my tune a little bit.
but it's more that every whoever's won Best Actor for a drama motion picture has gone on to be nominated at the Oscars for Best Actor, and Jim Carrey's the only one person who's won that award and then not gotten nominated, which is more my point. There's typically a major correlation between those. Even though they're not, there's not really that much overlap in voting. It's just whoever wins that will then get nominated. So it is weird though that Jim Carrey didn't get nominated, even though he totally should have. Like it is a
Yeah.
to go into the film, it is a fantastic performance, and I think that yeah, it's probably his best work. Yeah, and I've seen him in quite a few things. I would say it's a career. Like he's really good in Eternal Sunshine, but I do think he is better in the Truman Show, just
Yeah.
personally.
All right. Do you want to start getting into the actual grit of the film?
Yeah. Just before we do, just to quickly touch on something. The Truman Show was nominated for 3 Oscars that year. Best Supporting Actor for Ed Harris.
Yeah.
Best
Which.
Direct.
Oh. Yeah.
Best Director, which is weird that they got Director but not Picture, because again, those usually correlate. And Best Original Screenplay. So it got like 3 pretty major nominations,
Nominations. Yeah.
and then it missed out on Picture and Actor, which is just bizarre. But it's just weird and frustrating when you look back and you're like, oh, they had the opportunity to do nominate one of the best film, one of the best films of the year, and then they don't. But yeah, so to sort of get into the film, I've listened to I've listened to other people talk about this film, and someone made a point in another podcast I was listening to of how I don't remember exactly what they said, but I think their general thing was they kind of wish the film had been made slightly differently in that we don't know that it's all like controlled. Like we're just sort of following Truman, like where as oblivious as
Where
him,
yeah,
and we
we're
discover
sort of
things.
looking on as what we assume a normal public would as this
Yeah,
guy going insane.
yeah, and and then like that's when like when the light falls very early on in the film, we would be like, that's very confusing. But because we know it's not real and this is all a simulate, well, it's like it's a controlled environment where he's put to live. It's I think their point was it's not as interesting or engaging, which I see their point and I understand what they're
Yeah.
saying, but I think the way it is, I still think it's phenomenally well done. Like it,
I don't think that I understand that would make a very good
yeah,
movie
that would
making
also
sort
make
of
a
idea,
phenomenal film as well. I think.
but we would then lose the the two-faced performances from Noah Emmerich, Ed Harris, Laura Linney.
Yeah,
Like
that is
like
true. That
those performances of us knowing that it's fake,
yeah,
and you got those subtle, those like just the quality of sort of you can tell they're lying when they
yeah,
talk and
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
Even and that might be because we already know it, but I think it's done so well, and I
hmm
wouldn't sacrifice. I wouldn't change anything if it meant sacrificing
Yeah,
Ed
that sort
Harris
of
being
depth.
pissed off, because
Yeah,
the whole discussion of God and
yeah,
um
because yeah, he's playing
like
God effectively.
yeah, being the director, quote unquote,
hmm
is oh yeah, it's my favorite point in the film.
Yeah, no, I think also the way it's structured as we see it in the film, I think it work because it's sort of that classic, the Hitchcock thing of like, we see a bomb under the table, and we see people, it's going to go off in 10 minutes, and we see these two people talking for 10 minutes, and we want them to discover the bomb, so everything goes well.
Yeah,
So, and I think it's sort of a similar thing here, where like we know the truth, and we want Truman to find out what the truth is, and I think that like the way it is, I think that is just as engaging because we know something Truman doesn't, and we want him to figure it out. And I think that is equally as engaging.
yeah,
I think it creates, yeah, because as you were just mentioning before, yeah, because we know everybody's in on it, and so when the characters are saying these things or when certain things happen, it's
where yeah, we're like, come on, Truman,
yeah,
like yeah,
we're trying
it,
to we want him to figure it out as well. Um,
yeah. Which I mean, most of the audience within the film, because we do see a lot of glimpses of the outer audience watching Truman.
yeah, we see
They
them.
all just want the best for Truman, whether it
Yeah,
is getting out or not.
yeah, and they their sort of thing of like they're they're watching this, and they're they're enjoying watching it, but as we see when it gets towards the end of the film, they're also really happy for him when he does eventually get out. Um, and it's for us, the audience, as well. I think that moment, him getting out, is very cathartic because it's like, he, gets out, and we get. I mean, I'm skipping right to the end, but the whole ending, I think, is really nice because I'm not against films having a sad ending, like where just not where
Yeah,
it leaves you sort of feeling depressed, but I also do love a film that just gives like an earnestly happy ending.
I think that's where the Truman Show like sort of conflicts, though. I feel like it's not. It is a happy ending. What we see is he's made it. Good afternoon, good evening, good night.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the reality of it is the worst.
Yeah.
That it is a tragedy. Like the reality of, oh, everything that I've once known to be true is a complete lie, and I
Mm.
have to fully readjust to being the most famous person ever.
Yeah.
I
I,
can never know when people are lying to me again or not.
yeah, I think I mean we're just jumping right to the end, but I don't think it
Yeah.
matters necessarily. I think that I kind of wish there was one because the film does end a tad abruptly for me. Like we see those two security guards and they just like, oh, let's see what else is on TV, and then it just ends. I kind of wish there was one like extra little scene of Truman in like outside of the dome and him just sort of
I don't know.
looking
I
out
do it.
on the world as it. I don't know. I feel like that might have been.
I sort of, yeah. I mean, that
I mean,
would
that's just
it
my
would
sort
be
of.
cool, but yeah. I personally, I feel like leaving it with like a bow, and
Yeah.
then yeah, I thought it was really just clever. The ability to like sort of recognize, oh, everything has been an act. I'll
Mm.
bow because it's bow signifies the end of a show, and then the end of the show is the end of the movie, and yeah,
Yeah. Exactly. I think that the film, sort of as a whole, really is because I don't it's it's a bit it's very it's a bit dark in sort of some of what it's doing, and this
oh yeah,
it's this whole taking this kid, this baby, and raising them up in this sort of controlled environment, and the whole world is watching. And I think it really does play upon these sort of elements of like you know how when like what is too far, and I think where it's really shown and illustrated to the audience that this isn't okay. Like they really make a whole
yeah,
thing of like this isn't okay, and these people he thinks he's been friends with for ages, for indeterminate amounts of time, are not his friends at all. They're just actors. They're just playing a part. It really
yeah.
and the whole, and even at the again
I just
towards
want to put on a good show. Yeah,
yeah, and even towards the ending where he's trying to escape and Ed Harris is like, I'll just knock the boat over, and he doesn't seem to have that. He doesn't have sympathy towards him. He's just trying to, yeah, he's making a TV show, and and then he tries to sort of play, tries to sort of be nice to Truman at the end to try and convince him to stay. Just shows the sort of his two-faced nature.
Well, it's a like it's sort of. I mean, he lacks any empathy whatsoever. Like that's
Yeah,
he says stone cold. Well, he was
mm,
born in the air. Why can't he die in the air?
yeah, exactly. I
Like,
think.
yeah, and he just flatly, like, just constantly thinks Truman will be okay with being told all this sort of lies
Mm,
by saying like, look, um,
he's trying to manipulate him into staying
yeah,
in the
we
dome.
accept the reality of the world we are presented. This it's a really good commentary on the idea of God again, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously he's playing God, but if he's God, he lacks empathy. He's willing to, flip your boat if it means not.
Him not get. He's willing to let him be killed as opposed to letting him be
Willing
free
to
and
make
have his
your
own.
sacrifice, yeah,
Yeah.
and for his creation, as they for his creation, as they say. And
Mm.
I'm like, I don't know. I think it's dark. It's dark.
Yeah, I think. I mean, Ed Harris, I think, yeah, does a really good job. He gives a really good performance in this, and I think his, the nomination for the Oscar, I think is deserved. I think he is, quite good. He's not in it that
Oh,
much though. He is like a real not. He's not in that much of the film. A lot of the film is just us
in the
following.
start, he's in it like once during the middle, and then like
He
he is the end. But yeah.
he's sort of the final bot. He's the main bad guy. But a lot of the film is just sort of following Truman and meeting all these different people. And one thing I noticed that I really paid attention to after it was pointed out to me by a video I saw is that a lot of the shots in this film are like from hidden cameras, basically, or they're
Oh yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that
Neighbor carrying the bin, the dog collar, the street light, the everything is
yeah,
all
like the
sort of
car,
the car camera, which is done
all the
really
people seem to have a camera on them somewhere, like, and I think
the
that's sort of.
camera. Yeah. My favorite one is the one behind the bathroom sink.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's a great one. Yeah,
where he draws on the mirror. Yeah, I think that's really well done.
yeah. I think it is a really ingenious way of shooting the film, and I think it adds a lot more to it as opposed to if they just shot it normally. Like I think and then when he starts getting outside of town, it's shot not from because that wouldn't be cameras out there because they don't expect him to go that far. It's just you know
Yeah.
so it's shot sort of like a how films are typically shot. It's not like a hidden camera thing. It's more of a standard way of shooting, and I think that
Yeah.
really helps elevate it and give it a unique style of filmmaking because I think if they just shot the entire film normally, it wouldn't be as interesting. It would be,
Oh no, not at all.
and I think,
Oh,
yeah,
but yeah.
I think we have sort of touched a bit on Jim Carrey, but I know and I said before there this is a career best performance, but I think he does sort of have that sort of Jim Carrey like sort of comedy bits where he's like wait like sort of like some of the faces he makes or when he's like yelling and all that like it's still like sort of classic comedy Jim Carrey, but I think he's able to combine that with genuine like anger and sadness and despair and he's very like he is a good actor like I think some people sort of dismiss him as being just a guy who sort of prances around and makes silly faces and everything when in reality he is a genuinely talented actor who can
Oh
do
yeah,
yeah you know um
Dr. Eggman.
yeah, he can really do a lot, and I think he's earlier this year I think he said he's kind of retired or going to retire anyway from making films, and I it's if he doesn't make another film, that would be unfortunate because I do like seeing him in things, but he's also established a career of like I think he will go down as one of the best, not just comedic actors, just one of the best actors in general. I would argue, like he
Yeah,
uh, um this is
yeah, yeah. Best actor in their field, 100%.
yeah, exactly.
The ability to sort of obviously physically mold because his face is rubber, and
Yeah,
then also to be able to mold into any character, something we have never seen. Look at, I mean, look at the other comedy actors who've created waves, and I say comedy actors, and it does a disservice to him. It really does, but 90% of his like catalog is
comedy, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
yeah,
I think like and you look at sort of around this time, there's Jim Carrey is he's very unique from a lot of other comics, from comedic actors at this time. Robin Williams was making waves around the time, but he's very different. Robin Williams isn't like this big physical actor. He's more just he talks very fast and he just is able to make
as mannerism. I
yeah.
think all the other comedy actors that created their era, because there was the Jim Carrey era, there was the Will Ferrell and the Adam Sandler, got Robin Williams, who was a constant across most of that.
Yeah,
They're all Will Ferrell is Adam Sandler is, you know what I mean? It's all Adam Sandler is in this movie. It's
yeah.
not this movie is this character, but it's played by Adam Sandler.
And I
Yeah,
think certain like I think Jim Carrey definitely has sort of people see it. Certain people, I think now that he's been doing this for a while and he's done more serious roles, but I think when he was starting to get into more serious acting, people were just sort of like, oh, he's Jim Carrey, he can't do serious acting, he's just sort of this comic
yeah,
actor.
yeah,
And it's same for guys like Adam Sandler as well, and Robin Williams. A lot of these sort of guys who made their start doing comedy. And if you even look to now, like comedy, like Jordan Peele, for example. He's this
yeah.
comedic, writer and actor and everything, but he's now been able to, you know,
There's
successfully
some of the best
bridge
horror films.
from comedy to horror and pretty solid horror films as well. Like he's not like he's good at it too. And I think certain people put certain actors in a box, and
Yeah,
and it's not just comedic actors too. Got people like Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart, very well known for Twilight and those films, but
yeah.
now they have gone beyond that, and a lot of people, well, certainly a lot more. A decent portion of people see them as more than just Twilight, and yeah, and that's comedy. It's hard
Well, look at
to.
Andrew. Look at Andrew. You also have actors who have always sort of done that, and people still see them as this.
Mm,
You never want one role to define you, which I think the Truman Show isn't that defining role. I think for Jim Carrey, the defining role is like it's Ace Ventura. It's some wacky, goofy sort of
yeah.
um like liar liar or yes man. But we can take Andrew Garfield for example. The Social Network, his performance in the Social Network was amazing.
Hmm.
He- but I think subtly in the public eye, he'll always be known as the bad Spider-Man. Which, like, the films were bad, I'll give him that. But he was a good Spider-Man. And now in Tick Tick Boom, and I think Andrew Garfield is one of my favorite actors, so quality. And he's
Mm.
a really good representation of what can happen
If you give an
to
actor a right role and
yeah,
you.
which I mean, there's not one other actor who could do the Truman Show like Jim Carrey did.
Mm.
To go from the whole just instantly questioning. Obviously, we're behind him because we know, and the
Yeah.
question whether would we be behind him if we didn't know is always going to be up for debate because we will never know. The ability to just go, you want to root for him and you want to have that everyone can sort of relate to the idea of being called crazy for thinking something
Mm.
or like being scared and people telling him don't worry, it's not real, it's not real. But to have that to be true, to have those all those fears realized
Mm.
and could you imagine if you were scared of something as a kid, and your mom said, "Don't worry, it's fine,"
Yeah.
and it was really fine. Like you were just a kid, you were scared of something, but
Mm.
then finding out, no, she was lying. It's not fine. Everything's a lie. Everyone's always lied to you.
I think casting Jim Carrey in this role, he's a very inherently likable guy, and he's very easy to like. You don't meet many people who dislike Jim Carrey as a person. Like people might not like what he does. Like they might
What
not
he
like his
says,
style of
yeah.
comedy.
What he
Of
says about media and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, he's certainly got some opinions that I don't agree with, but I'm sure if I met him, I'd get along with him, and he seems like he's a very solid dude. Like
Yeah,
I would get,
100%.
and I think he is just likable in the like I don't like every film I've seen him in, but more often than not, I do like him
Oh yeah,
just being in things.
yeah.
Um,
Just a few little statistics right before we get into the actual meat of the movie
yeah,
or the film. Sorry, movie. It has a 95% on Tomatoes, a
that's pretty
90% on
good.
Metacritic. It's very properly rated.
That's fair enough. That's a
Uh,
pretty good percentage. Yeah.
yeah, it won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor, Motion Picture, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
We've already sort of touched on that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing that it was sort of a very big hassle to get made. Um,
Uh. Yeah.
and
It seems like the sun, like at the end where he's at that big wall, like it must have been a pain to get sort of some of this financed because it's very
big length
clean and
wall.
very uh
Well, they had to basically like create an island. They didn't really make an island, but they had to like create for the film an island
yeah, they had to
and
make however many houses and
make it feel like it was sort of a timepiece, which it is. It's supposed to be the 50s, you know what I mean?
mm,
Um, which I think is another awesome thing that it's supposed to. You're also watching someone grow up in the 50s, in the 90s. You're along with the audience that's outside. It's like, yeah, we watch Truman, but he grows up in this Bayside town. They all ride those type of bikes, and
yeah, they've got those
although the
old
cars
school
are a little more
cars.
high
Yeah.
tech and like, oh, the cars have like tape decks or whatever, but
Yeah.
sort of the whole he would have never seen a stage light like that before until it dropped in front of him. And he
Exactly.
sees it and drops and goes, doesn't even know what it is.
Yeah, that's why
But
he's sort of so confused. It's like
but that I mean, if you want to get into if you're ready to get into the meat of the movie,
yeah, I'm ready to.
yeah, that's at the start of the film. Yeah, we see Truman go through his daily routine. The first about 10 minutes of the film give us everything we need. We know that we're watching him and that he
Yeah.
can't see us.
Yeah,
We know that he's
exactly.
being directed.
Mhm.
Everyone around him, sorry, is being directed. Which, like, if you artificialize an environment, are you artificializing the things in the environment that aren't fake? If you put something real in a fake environment, what's to say that that real thing isn't also fake because it's
Yeah.
influenced by everything else? We see that he's in a not so happy marriage. We see
Yeah.
that his neighbors are all friendly to him, and we see the classic line, if in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And that's what he just says to his friends. But it's like the perfect end tag for a show as well. Like I could be
Yeah.
watching a night show and watching Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, I'm not watching Jimmy. I'm not watching Jimmy. I'd be watching Conan, and
Yeah.
Conan will say like if that was Conan's catchphrase, it wouldn't. It would make like it's a really good catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly. And
It,
it's very memorable too. It's a
yeah,
really and we see and it's also perfect for the ending of the film. Where it all ends. It's like no, it's a great ending and a
yeah,
great way to conclude that story. But I think we meet everything we know everything we need to know about Truman. I heard there was initially when they were writing it, he Truman was gonna was gonna be with like some prostitutes or something, and then they thought, oh, that probably wouldn't.
I do not like that.
That they were like, yeah, that's we don't really need that, because I think it was to help sort of illustrate the marriage problems, but I don't think we need that. I think we see
I
how.
think also the role of the sort of college fling and
Mm,
how he still obsesses over her. I think that's, but the fact that also she can sort of see that obsession because she's a viewer.
yeah,
Um,
I think.
yeah, I don't know.
Uh,
I feel like that serves it enough, and it makes Truman likable enough. If it was prostitutes, I wouldn't like Truman. I would be less on his side.
mm,
If certain like because it would just be like, oh well, it's dirty. It's whatever. It's totally
yeah,
fine. But um, I the whole instead of you know troubled marriage that involves drinking and prostitutes and stuff, it's more like he's still sort of just a kid longing for like the
yeah.
girl at the the
He's
girl at the playground sort of thing. Like it's that girl. I loved her eyes sort of thing.
yeah.
And
He's very sort of, yeah, again, because he's sort of,
boy,
and he's only lived in this sort of small, because they sort of mention that he's 30 by the time we at a certain point.
yeah.
At some point in the film, he's like 30 years old, and it's like he's never left that, sort of small
His
town.
desire, and you've got things in the design that's done so well to prevent that. His desire to go to Fiji is um like a point of the movie why he wants to leave the island. But you go to the flight center, and all the things say like "don't fly," like lightning striking an airplane. It could happen
Yeah.
to you, and don't leave. And it's all
Mm.
this like little brainwashing that I think is really really cleverly done from a narrative and from like a production standpoint. It's like, yeah, just put those little things in there. It makes it a real movie, a real world.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's crazy how like watching the film and just every way they have to stop Truman from doing, you know, any like from trying to leave, when like trying to catch the bus, and then the bus, breaks down, and then there's the whole thing of, he's trying to drive down the street to get out, and there just happens to be a line of cars. He's when he's at the hospital, and there's that guy with the big like
He somehow, for
cabinet
some
thing.
reason, manages to have a fear of the water because, like, obviously, it's because his father died in a boating accident,
Yeah,
which would be
and
very
it
traumatic for anyone. But at the same time, the water is like a really great representation of like an impenetrable force or like
mm,
something like overcoming, you know,
yeah,
that yeah.
and I think it's I think it makes sense why the creators of the show would do that sort of thing, so he's not tempted to try and leave, because the only ways out, it appears, would be over bridges and stuff, and bridges are over the water, and he's so fearful of the water that he can't even drive over a bridge over the water, and he won't try and take a boat out or anything, because again, so I think it makes sense why they would create that fear in him, and manipulate him into not wanting to leave, because his father dies, from his perspective, and I think it's a very traumatic thing though, and it's very cruel to have it make a kid watch their parent die, from Truman's perspective, of course, because he
But
doesn't know.
not even just that, but have them die, show back up, and then his mother convinced them that it was fake.
Yeah, I that's a yeah, the film, it really shows how, yeah, cruel and unlike, like these people, like people making the show are inherently unlikable just for doing this at all, and the film, it doesn't go too far in making them seem so unlike, like,
Well, they try to make it somewhat likable. I mean, you've got they all obviously care about Truman,
yeah, but
but
they're also care
you've got
about.
the interviews at the start of the film where it's like these fake interviews of the the actors, and we're shown
Yeah,
as we step into the film where it's like the Truman Show is my life. It's like we all care about Truman. It's not a role. It is who I am, and I'm like,
mm.
yeah, it but like it's a role.
It
But
is a yeah. Yeah. They try to rationalize what they're doing, uh, and try and almost arguably trying to convince themselves that they're doing the right thing. Because I think
yeah,
some of them probably are like trying to convince themselves that they're doing a good like because Ed Harris is straight up just he's like, yep, we should be doing this. This is good. I want,
yeah,
but it sort of some of the others are kind of like a bit more like Truman's dad. He tries to get all these people trying to get in to tell him that hey, this isn't real. Like there are people who don't like this, and Truman's dad showing up. He was a part of this for a bit, and then he realized it was wrong, and he wanted to try and tell him, and then he goes back to pretending. I think it really is um, good at sort of portraying sort of moral ambiguity in some
yeah.
of the characters, like the ones that are meant to have some sort of moral ambiguity to them.
It's the scene on the bridge with his best friend is. I mean, I remember that being terrifying as a kid. Yeah, it's that whole like idea of like everyone close to you just being a lie and everything close to you being a
Mm.
lie, and you can't even trust the person that says I'm the only one you can trust.
Yeah, and he's saying like
Yeah,
if this is a thing and it's not real, then I wouldn't be I would be lying to you, and I wouldn't be lying to you, and it's very quite
the
heartbreaking.
last thing I'd ever do was lie to you. Yeah,
Yeah, and he's being fed these lines. I think that's a really great scene. This film there's a lot of really great scenes in this film, and that bit on the bridge, just the two of them talking is like very well done. I think it really just shows how good of a dramatic actor Jim Carrey is. He's
yeah.
crying, but he's not like overselling it. Like he's got tears in his eyes, but he's not going too. Because I think there would be possibility that he would go too far, and I think he plays it just right. Like
I
he's
mean, you watch the whole film. He starts off like there are so many things that are done from the start to the end of the film as well. You've got little things from his hair. The first scenes we see him, he's doing his hair. He's got perfectly well cut, well trimmed, and he's well dressed. He's smart. He's wearing a
yeah,
nice sweater and a nice jacket, and like he looks smart. The final scenes, his hair is like completely and utterly scraggly. Obviously, he just like fall for his life in a boat, but he's wearing a turtleneck sweater.
and
He's
he's got like
not
some ripped, and he's got like his pads have been like ripped and
ripped.
yeah, it's
Yeah. And that happens. I mean, like we start with the light, the stage light falling, which is like obviously it's like a metaphor for the sky is falling. You know what I mean? The
yeah,
the
and
world
nobody
is very
believes him because well
yeah
they they
yeah.
tell him he's lying or he's seeing things. Yeah,
It's very common. Like it's Chicken Little. But it's very sort of uh common idea. Oh, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. He all he does is look up and question it, and he
yeah,
can't see anything because it's so bright. He's looking at the sky, but he's like, "What is this?" The light says like stage light number. I think it's like 56 or something. I'll have to look
yeah,
at the photo, but then that is sort of like okay. It's like slowly put the idea in the head. He's like, What is this?" Is a question. Then he sees his father, who's a
yeah,
homeless man,
and
which they
he's
try to cover up as cleaning up the streets of
yeah,
New
and then
Haven.
they take him away, and he's like, oh, I want to, because it's he recognizes him as his dad. It's like I want to see him, I want to see, and they take him away, and it really shows how, and all the ways that they try to stop him or they try to remove people from it. The
Yeah,
girl who meet that girl
he fell in love with. Yeah,
yeah, and then they go to the beach, and then her dad, quote unquote, takes her away and says, "Oh, this is just a schizophrenic episode or whatever." It's like really quite. yeah, I see why Truman would sort of obsess over it and be affected in that way, because it's very common, sort of lost love is what it is. He and he never gets any real closure to that. He just
Everything, although it's fully artificialized, everything Truman experiences is so distinctively like a human experience. It,
mm,
it's it's about lost love. It's about like questioning. We've always like don't we've all sort of gone like we've all had thoughts of, is this person lying? Is this person just being fake for me, like for
mm,
my sake or whatever? And but it's again, it's also dystopian. It's like nothing we've ever experienced, because at the same time it's completely real and
yeah.
like, which is you know, sort of terrifying. But
Hmm.
yeah, again, you've got the line of questioning with the light falling, his father, which then he questions his mother, and you see him slowly start to test sort of things. He sees patterns.
Yeah, like when he's in the car and he's like, okay, so there'll be this girl riding by on a bike, there'll be a guy walking past with the flowers, and then there'll be like a beetle with like a dented fender or whatever, and then it happens, and he's like, oh, see, and then he's trying to explain to his to Laura Linney, is she's his wife, isn't she? Isn't that?
So yeah,
He's trying to explain to her, how he knows this, and then she's, it's a combination
you're
of,
crazy, going crazy. Like
yeah,
yeah,
it's a combination of her acting, but also her genuinely being kind of terrified because this hasn't happened, and she's like, well, Truman, what do you do? This isn't, okay. And then when they see, yeah, his friend, and she's like, and she's saying all these things, and he's like, what do you mean by that? And it's like, it's really quite, yeah, it's very, yeah, dystopian, I think, is a way of putting it. I think it has sort of something that kind of terrifies me, of the concept of everybody being in on something that I'm not.
yeah, it's a
Like,
bit of FOMO.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
missing out.
like something sort of, I'm trying to think of like a lot of that's sort of more of a horror thing though, and sort of it's sort of Twilight Zone esque in that,
Yeah,
because this film kind of does feel like a Twilight Zone episode, but made into a film, kind of like it. It's a very much, but it's more upbeat than the Twilight Zone is, because Twilight Zone's a very,
little bit.
I guess Black Mirror as well.
Yeah,
It's Black Mirror Twilight Zone esque, and but it's far more upbeat than those both those shows are. Um, but yeah, just this idea that Truman, that yeah, it's everything's a lie. None of these people are actually his well, I think
yeah,
they're all, I feel like they do have some form of connection with him, but a lot of it is not real. Like, that family that he says, I guess I don't see a good afternoon, good evening, good night to. It
yeah,
feels like he just sort of says that because he's being nice to the neighbors, but he doesn't really know them, and they don't really know him. They're just
yeah,
actors. They're just there just so he sees them every day. And
yeah.
the neighbor with the bin, and then the
The
two, like,
dog, yeah,
the two twins that cut that like push him against the wall or something, which is very odd. But
yeah,
like, these all, they're all just doing a job. They're not trying to really form connections with him. It's, yeah,
yeah. He
just,
sees the. You got the like production where the elevator's supposed to be. Like he sees a whole production set,
oh, I
and
think that was a great bit. That was
yeah, I
fantastic.
think that's really like it's really well done. Because it's right in the line of, like I've seen my father. I've seen lights fall, and now
Yeah,
you've seen what appears to be a full production set in the background, and
yeah,
no one believes you,
yeah.
and then and then um to have your partner come home and say, oh, a horrible elevator accident where multiple people felt like they were eating crude, like I swear to God, they had like croissants on the table and strawberries. Like, I don't think that was an elevator
Yeah,
accident at all.
and again, it plays into that thing of like this would be terrifying. You know, you're seeing things, and people are like, oh no, that's you weren't you're just seeing
But
you
it
know,
was,
and then like oh you're
yeah,
just imagining things. Then it would just sort of go into level of like oh am I like losing my mind? Like it
the amount of
really
confidence you would need to fully go to have the idea to think everyone, my best friend and my wife and my mother
yeah
are
everyone
lying to
is against him and everyone's telling him that he is yeah imagining things or
me. It's a lot of self assurance. Yeah, so we move further in the film
mm,
where obviously he's sort of like um he's like confided in his best friend and stuff. You've got
yeah on the bridge and I
the
think
scene where she's so clearly you know the scene where his wife is so clearly like advertising a knife
that's such a I
and the coffee and the
that's
hot
brilliant
chocolate
because it's like yeah
and it's
because you
like
know
yeah and
that's
he's
how,
like who are you talking to?
yeah
I
it's,
thought yeah
I think that's a great bit because I think it really is like because this is the only way they can make because you know it would be expensive to run that massive a production
oh yeah
consistently 24 hours a day 365 you know like it would really and actually I just thought that means a ton of them aren't spending Christmas with their families then because they're just
yeah
doing this whole thing you know and Truman doesn't have you know hasn't had a Christmas with his actual family well because his family was
he doesn't have
unwanted
an
he doesn't have an
yeah
actual family and so that does sort of like create the film, I think a lot of it, you know, we only see, you know, like a few days, you know, like a few days
yeah
of Truman's life. But it does, and you know, we sort of see flashbacks of like him as a baby and all that, and sort of him growing up, and just yeah, they continue all the lengths they go to, you know, and as a kid, you know, because he was raised in this environment, he doesn't question it because as a kid, you don't really quite when an adult tells you not to do something, you don't do it because as a kid you're not you know you're more gullible and I think that's why it takes him so long to start questioning things because he starts to get you know because he's you know 30 in the film and then he starts questioning things because you know he's an adult and weird things start happening around him and I think I kind of could be read as like you know subtextually about you know maybe religion or something like that if you want to you
yeah
know because there's the whole sort of god thing with Ed
well it's
Harris's
I
character.
I believe towards the end of it like again we jump to the end but the whole imagery of him because the way it's framed, especially with the cinematography, it's like he's walking across water, and it's the first
Yeah,
shots of a camera that we don't have until like it's the first time we're looking at it where it doesn't look like it's like a home camera or a security camera
yeah,
or like
it's like
it doesn't have that goofy zoom. It's very cinematic.
and like the sort of
It's
black sort of like corner like the sort of blackish around the
yeah,
corners
the
of it.
staircase, but
Yeah,
also it's the whole him walking on water to a staircase in the sky. It's like symbolism for death.
yeah,
And I think I heard something once where it was Truman dies, and this is him being dead. Um, and him walking through the door is going to the afterlife. So uh, like if you think of it as Truman dying during the boating or whatever, he's walking along water to a stairway to heaven to death's door.
mm,
We're fully finally taken out of the handy cam, the you know every
right,
sort of the secret camera, the little you know production cameras, where we're taken out of that. We're into like a cinematic, and he talks to his creator, and
yeah,
he like walks through the door, and we're shown nothing else.
yeah, and I think that's yeah, that's certainly an interesting
It's an
interpretation of
interesting
it.
idea. I think it
I
is a
think it is,
metaphor for like walking to heaven, but it's less about walking to the afterlife and more about well, it is his afterlife. He's not dead, but his reality is.
Yeah,
So
and sort of that version of Truman
is
isn't a thing anymore. You know, he's gonna leave. He's gonna become a different version of himself now that he lives in an actual proper
yeah.
reality and lives in the real world as opposed to just being confined in this space.
Str- he literally punctured a hole in his reality, and
Yeah,
with his boat, and goes, okay,
yeah,
this is yeah.
and I
I think it's
think
done really well.
to sort of talk on sort of more technical sides of the film, mentioned the cinematography and how I love the way it's shot. I think production wise, like in terms of like the sets and all that, I think the sets are very well done. I mean, especially that
Yeah,
wall, the sky wall at the end,
you sort of don't say it until the boat hits it.
yeah, I'm yeah, because and then you see the shadows start like
Yeah,
and then it punctures a hole and it's like oh he's yeah, and then he reaches out to touch it and you can just sort of see the shadow slowly come in to frame as he's about to touch the wall and everything. And I think and it's really nice imagery is seeing him you
and
know
obviously it's a huge relief that he was right, but also heartbreaking that he was right. Like
yeah, because now he knows everything has been
ever, yeah,
fabricated and I think it really like yeah it's the ending is very kind of bittersweet
yeah.
because he gets the happy end, he gets out, people want him to get out and everything, but yeah now he has to
Live with the reality of yeah, whoa, like 30 years of my life gone,
yeah, and now he
for
that's
what?
30 years he didn't get to live in the 30 years he didn't get to travel, 30 years of not having real relationships, not having real friends or because he was adopted, he is an adopted,
Yeah,
but he still doesn't have any real uh, relationships really,
he was
like
adopted by Omnicam though, like, and he was adopted by a company that like, yeah,
we're just
sort of
using him to create a
plucked him at
TV
birth.
show,
Yeah,
and I think that it really is quite like I think the ending is I think it's a great ending. I think it is the right ending. I think it would have been yeah, I think and I do really like the scenes we get with all the people watching the show. Like there's that guy in the bathtub, and then there's like those two security guards, and then there's all the people in the bar and the two old
yeah.
ladies. It's a nice mix of people who are watching this to really show that hit like Truman has captured the world. Because if it was just the same kinds of people, it wouldn't
Well,
be.
well, that's it happens at the poster of like the film
Yeah,
is
it's just a big
yeah,
screen with him on it, and there's a massive crowd of people. I think the posters for the film is actually really great too. Like there's
you're the one where it's like him sleeping on the big TV.
and then
Um,
there's one which is like made up of a bunch of different screens
of
of like his day to day life. Um, and then there's one where it's like I
the
think on the
creators.
DVD because I've
Is that
got
the one
the
where he's got the spaceship around his head on the mirror?
mm,
Oh, the space helmet. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm just looking at posters now. There are some that just have him walking up the steps at the ending, which is a massive spoiler because like that's the whole ending of the film. But I think I think that is a great poster of just that big screen with him sleeping and then there's all these people watching. I think that is it's
Tells you all you
it's a
yeah.
perfect poster and it's a perfect way of I think because certain posters to a poster really a great poster can really like tell you everything you need to know about a movie like instantly, like you see like sort of I've found it with superhero films a lot of the posters aren't that particularly engaging, but it's because they don't then they're sort of part of a big
Oh
franchise.
yeah. It's them, the stupid like triangle and the circle, and it's the whole like we're gonna have the two main people in the front or the back, and they're like
Mm.
whatever, and then we have all the other characters in the middle, and then there's some sort of like color circle around them, and I hate it.
Yeah,
I think it's
like
so silly. I'm like, because it's just like so cut and paste.
I think like if I was to look at some films from just this past year, like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, the poster is just the characters on a poster. Uh, you know, uh, uh, same with Glass Onion, it's just the characters. And a lot of the
Yeah.
it's not you don't get as many great unique posters now, and I think that's kind of a shame because like in my room right now I've got a Back to the Future poster, which I think is one of the best posters just ever. Like it's a
Oh, it's
phenomenally,
so cool.
and it's got written on it. He was never in
Is
time for his classes. He wasn't in time for his dinner.
that yeah? Is
And
that the
then one
DeLorean where he's looking at his watch, sort of thing?
Yeah, like it's such a simple poster. He's got the DeLorean, and you've got Marty, and he's looking at his watch. Like it tells you everything you need to know. And I think posters don't really do that as much now.
Yeah.
It's more often
Is it?
than not you just have you have characters from the film, and that's just sort of it,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. If you look at like, yeah, the Black Panther poster is a good one. It's a good movie, but it looks like every other Marvel
Yeah, every Marvel
poster.
poster is sort of the same. Like I'm just looking like the Shang-Chi poster is just all the major characters in the film, and then there's like Shang-Chi and the villain, and they're fighting like, but it's very standard. Like it's not you don't see as many unique posters anymore. And some films you don't necessarily need to have like an amazing standout poster, but like Truman Show, it's a very simple film in what it's doing, but it has a fantastic poster though, which I think help
Yeah.
elevate. We're talking a lot about the poster, but I think it is it's very good, and it really
Well, it's an important part of any film.
especially for like it's and it shows you everything you need to know. There's like the tagline is great, the imagery is all there, like it's got everything you need to
Understand? You don't go. No one goes into the Truman Show thinking, "What's going on? What's the premise?"
everything right is you know yeah everything is everything you need right there, and that's
But
it.
it's not spoiled at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It just gives you sort of it's like a plot synopsis, like a sort of like that one line that tells you like what a film's
Yeah.
about. Like I think that's what a poster should be able to do is just tell you what the film's about, just
Yeah.
very simply. But yeah, I just think the Truman Show is really great. It's
I
really
think
it's
it was done incredibly well. I've said
yeah.
that multiple times. Like, I, I'll always have a soft spot for it because just and maybe because I love Jim Carrey, maybe because I like resonate with the themes of the film, maybe
Mm.
because I think it tells us you're looking at something that is really human and we can all experience, except we can never experience.
Yeah,
And it's so fake and real at the exact same time. It's so real world. I could 100% see this happen. I mean, reality TV is huge.
yeah, this is
Um,
effectively reality TV, except that he doesn't know he's being filmed. Like that's sort
yeah,
of the difference. And
but especially with the internet age, it is aged so well with people like
yeah,
streaming their whole lives online just in
yeah,
order to get clicks and views and this and that. So, and people love watching it. So,
yeah. Reality TV, it's like some of the only TV like sort of on cable that people, because cable is, people don't watch things. It's on it's streaming now, Netflix or Disney
Yeah.
Plus or anything like that. You don't really get that much sort of free to air TV anymore in a way that you used to, 10 years ago. Like, I used to
Now
watch
it's mostly sports and like game shows.
it's sports and game shows and reality TV, and people, but those, and the only reason why those are still being shown is because people watch them all the time, year after year. Every year there's always The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and there's
Or
however many
X on the
options.
Beach or Love Island or
Yeah, and there's all
something.
those,
Yeah.
and there's however many, variations and spin-offs of that, and then you go between countries, you've got Love Island UK and Love Island
Yeah.
whatever, and you've got,
You got the Real
Survivor.
Housewives, Housewives of Manhattan, Housewives of Soho, Housewives of Melbourne, Housewives of Sydney.
Yeah, and then
Like
you go into, game shows like Survivor or, The Amazing Race or anything, which is also
you got
reality
the
TV
yeah,
as well.
I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
oh, we want to watch people live, which is
Yeah.
I think so weird. But
I think
then again, I love the movies, so I can't like.
and I think that's why it's believable that people would be so interested in watching the Truman Show, and watching Truman Burbank living his life, because people have this interest in seeing other people's lives, and I don't, and it is kind of weird though, because his life is so mundane a lot of the
Yeah.
time, and then very occasionally they'll be like, oh, we're going to throw in a plot twist where, like, his dad comes back because, the actor's back, we need to write him in somewhere, or, his dad dies, when he's a kid, or he, there's this stolen love or anything like that. It really is interesting, and I think, like, it definitely, like, you could make the Truman Show now, and it would it hasn't aged in 24 years or something, like 20 something years.
I I honestly believe that it is probably the best age because like Back to the Future ages in graphics quality and stuff and other
Oh,
things. I
certain
mean,
elements of Back to the
whenever
Future
you
don't
watch,
hold up as well.
it'll be more prevalent in 50 years with the whole like rising age of security and public being watched, especially in like Asia at the moment, which I don't know enough about to talk about. But even in Australia, like I'll walk down Queen Street Mall and they can see people on like because there's cameras obviously.
Yeah,
They'll say over the speakerphone, everybody cease like who's riding a scooter in Queen Street Mall, that's prohibited, cease doing it now. It's an efficient way of policing it,
but
but
there could be a
it's
possibility
creepy.
where it would,
It's creepy. I don't
and
like the yeah.
I think, yeah, it's interesting watching the Truman Show, because it doesn't really seem like, I don't think, like, some, like, the Truman Show is obviously unrealistic in that they wouldn't just make a TV show about one just like random person, like that would never happen. But in
Yeah.
terms of an people being engaged in watching this person live their life, even though it is so mundane and it's so boring. Like, I don't get reality TV at all that isn't like game shows and stuff like Real Housewives and Bachelor and shit. Like, I don't understand why that appeals to people, because it's just so boring, watching people fall in love, quote unquote, because I don't buy people
No, no,
like
it's
falling in love
I
in,
don't
like,
think they've ever stayed together in like one of those shows.
I think, yeah, every time that show ends, they break up, like, like soon after the show ends, because it's like,
Married
yeah,
at First Sight is huge in this country. Oh my god. I'm like, it's such a stupid premise. Yeah, I feel like the Truman Show is like a perfect sort of commentary on reality TV. It's
hmm,
a commentary on us as a viewer, why
yeah,
we're watching what we're watching.
and I
It's a
think
yeah.
that ending though, where the two security guards are like, oh, it's over, okay, what else is on, and they just immediately go to the next. They're like, okay, what's on now? They can't, they don't want to sort of take it in and sort of digest what's happened. They're just like, all right,
Or why
next
would they
thing, which
want
is,
something that they don't want something that's real? They want something that's reality. They
yeah,
they where it's like the whole term of reality is lost on meaning, whether it be to Truman, which has figured out everything is a lie, or to the
yeah,
viewer, where as soon as stuff actually gets real, they go, "Got to switch."
yeah,
It's I
and
can't handle this.
yeah,
Whereas, yeah,
and I think that's a really great commentary on how sort of people will move on from something, something, and like they will move on to the next, sort of interesting
Oh,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And that's again just as prevalent now as I assume it wasn't even as big of a thing. I think now with the advent of the internet and social media platforms and YouTube and all those sorts of things, people really
Uh,
have sort of they just want things to sort of they don't want to, like, they just sort of want things to be done. It's like the next trend, like, all right, this thing isn't popular anymore, what's the next big thing we're gonna do? Like, I think it really.
yeah, it's so yeah. I feel like it's aged so much better as like yeah, but it is it'll always be prevalent. It doesn't talk about nonsense. It's it's also sort of similar to the films of the time. Whereas you
Mm.
watch Jaws and you go, I ain't swimming in the ocean for a little bit. You watch Truman Show, you go, I'm not picking my nose for a while. Like
Yeah.
just in case everyone's watching me.
Yeah, I've actually had those kinds of thoughts before of like I don't believe this is a simulation, I think, but I do just sort of wonder what would happen if,
If it
like, people were watching me, like, right now, like I'm in the shower right now, and there's people just like watching me right now, like how bizarre that would be. I know it's not real, but I just think, like, what if if it was
was,
though.
but that's it. That's a bit of free will. You just sit in the shower and you're like, oh, I can think for myself, like
Mm.
you which is also like another great like thing within the Truman Show is the whole does he have free will? If everything is completely and utterly catered around creating a fake environment, is it nature or nurture? Is the nurture of being raised in there mean that he
Mm.
thinks a certain way? Or is it his nature to question it? Which I think it's his nature, which is like it's happy for going, we have free will. We can think on
Mm.
our own.
Mm-hmm.
We can it's it's this like things are this way because I not because I'm being told they're this way.
Yeah, he had
And
like
that's free.
yeah, and I think with Truman, yeah, they are very much trying to suppress him from having these sort of his own, yeah, thought, that they're very much trying to keep him as it that they are trying to suppress him and suppress his sort of free will. And I think that is again another interesting thing where they are trying to suppress any and all sort of independent thinking, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
He's trying to, and I think, yeah, it's a really interesting. Like, the film really does delve into some really unique and quite genius themes for a film. And this film's not even that long. This film's like a little over 100 minutes long, but it delves into all these amazing, yeah, ideas and possibilities, and it makes you, and it gives you sort of ask presents these sort of questions to an audience, and it does it in less than 2 hours, and it's kind of like, I you know I'm glad that, because I think I may have touched on this before, but I find a lot of films that go over 2 hours don't really justify being as long as they are. Like, they could be done
Yeah.
in 100 minutes or whatever, and it would be doing the
Yeah.
same thing.
I fully agree.
And I think Truman Show being under 2 hours, like 140-ish minutes, I think, or something, is like
Oh,
perfect.
it's a good film. It's a really good film to just like watch. If you're on the train and it's a 2 hour ride, you can listen to some music and then check on the Truman Show. Or whatever. And it's I think it's a perfect time length to be able to like actually, because you're not getting fatigued with the movie, but you're also it's long enough where you don't feel like it was over too quickly.
Yeah, no, it moves at a very fast pace though, but it feels like everything you don't feel like the film is not like it focuses on things long enough that you are invested in and you understand things and you feel like everything's been developed well enough, but not too long that you start getting bored of it. Like it moves at a very quick pace, and I think it
Yeah,
by the time it gets to
yeah,
the ending, you're like, oh Jesus, it's been nearly over an hour, an hour and a half now. I was, it's just one of those films, and I do love it. This is, I think, yeah, this film is great. It's just, I don't really think there's anything that I can think of that's particularly wrong with it. Honestly, I think
yeah.
it is.
There are ideas that would like there's always going to be ideas that, oh, what if it was this, what if it was that, but then there's no serious faults. Maybe,
There's nothing that takes away from my enjoyment of the
yeah.
film. Like,
Because I think everything is done so purposefully.
mm-hmm,
Like it is thought out so methodically. I
yeah,
think it's done really well. Like it's done. It yeah. I can't fault it.
yeah,
There's no things where it's like I wish they changed this and I wish it was
mm,
this way.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think yeah, sort of it's all put together very well. Like the score is really nice. It's not particularly stand out, but it's nice. I think the sound design, like when he's on the ocean, like the wet, the
Yeah,
rain and all
yeah,
that, like it just creates this brilliant, this the sort of slight eeriness of honestly like when they're like because I feel like we've sort of touched on a lot of things, but one thing I do actually really like is that scene where all the actors are just sort of standing in place and they're just waiting to go and there's a certain eeriness to it
yeah.
of
It's real creepy.
and I think that like I'm a
Or like
fan
when
of
they just when they turn on the whole daylights because they can't find him,
yeah and they're
and they
just
just
like
skip to day in the middle of the night. They're just
yeah
like,
and they're
we've
just
got to
like
find him.
we've just got to do this now we don't care. I think it's great. I think this film is pretty much perfect. I just it's a great film. It's really really good.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
I
we've
think run our course. Yeah, for me, 10 out of 10. Like,
yeah I'd say this is a 10 out of 10. And now that I've rewatched it, it is now in my top 10 films of all time. It
I
is
like
number
to hear that. I
10
like to hear.
on my list actually.
Yeah.
It's
Oh well, you'll always have like preferred films. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
but it is pretty much as close to a perfect film as you can get. I reckon. Like it really has everything in it. The performances are really good to great.
yeah.
It's
There's no one in the film where you think, oh my god, they're too big of a star for this. Like
yeah,
the casting is done really properly where it doesn't like if Brad Pitt was in it, I'd be like, oh my
yeah,
fucking god.
yeah, and
Like if
and
it was Brad
also
Pitt, then, yeah,
and all the characters feel defined. Like even sort of the smaller parts, like even those people at the who work in the control room, they all feel fairly well fleshed out, even though they're not in the film that much. Like the
yeah,
film really is quite yeah it's just great. I love this film. It's one of my all-time
yeah,
favorites, and I think we've pretty much touched on everything major in the film.
yeah.
I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode. I think if you have like it's a great film. It's uh just
Definitely go and watch it.
it's and I was slightly worried that it might not hold up on this rewatch, honestly, but it did hold up. It is just fantastic. So thank you all for listening to this week's episode. Episode we're on to beginning the course to episode 200 in a couple years, which will be fun. Check out. I've done 100 other episodes. Just there's lots to choose from. And coming soon, the final episode of the year is going to be a big culmination of the year. Basically, throughout this year, I've done several episodes tying into new releases, and that will be discussed in the review of the year episode, where I've gotten various guests who have been on the show, including Harry, uh,
Yeah.
to talk about some new releases, and I'll just put them in a big old. I'll compile them together, and yeah, it'll just be discussions on new releases because I didn't do that last year, and last year's episode went way too long. But this year, hopefully, it'll be a bit of a shorter length. I think that's pretty much it, unless you've got anything final to say, Harry.
No, I don't. Thank you for having me on. I
Yeah,
really enjoy it every time. I like talking about, especially about Truman Show. So
yeah, and yeah, I'll have you on for more in the future because I think this is good. I think we get good discussions out of this. So yeah, thank you all for listening to this week's episode, and I will see all of you in the next one. Goodbye.